Chapter 28 of Beverly of Graustark. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Christine Blashford. Beverly of Graustark by George Barr McCutcheon. Chapter 28. A Boy Disappears. This startling announcement threw the company into the greatest excitement. Baldos ran down the steps and to the side of the astonished princess. "Prince Dantan!" she cried, unbelieving. He pushed the boyish figure aside and whispered earnestly into Yetive's ear. She smiled warmly in response, and her eyes sparkled. "And this, your highness, is his sister, the Princess Candace," he announced aloud, bowing low before the girl. At that instant she ceased to be the timid, cringing boy. Her chin went up in truly regal state as she calmly, even haughtily, responded to the dazed, half-earnest salutes of the men. With a rare smile, a knowing one in which mischief was paramount, she spoke to Baldos, giving him her hand to kiss. "Ah, dear Baldos, you have achieved your sweetest triumph, the theatrical climax to all this time of plotting. My brother's sister loves you for all this. Your highness," and she turned to Yetive with a captivating smile, "is the luckless sister of Dantan welcome in your castle? May I rest here in peace? It has been a bitterly long year this past week," she sighed. Fatigue shot back into her sweet face, and Yetive's love went out to her unreservedly. As she drew the slight figure up the steps, she turned and said to her ministers, "I shall be glad to receive Prince Dantan in the throne room without delay. I am going to put the princess to bed." "Your highness," said Baldos from below, "may I be the first to announce to you that there will be no war with Dawsbergen?" This was too much. Even Marlanx looked at his enemy with something like collapse in his eyes. "What do you mean?" cried Lorry, seizing him by the arm. "I mean that Prince Dantan is here to announce the recapture of Gabriel, his half-brother. Before the hour is past, your own men from the dungeon in the mountains will come to report the return of the fugitive. This announcement may explain in a measure the conduct that has earned for me the accusation which confronts me. The men who have retaken Gabriel are the members of that little band you have heard so much about. Once I was its captain, Prince Dantan's chief of staff, the commander of his ragged army of 12. Miss Calhoun and fate brought me into Edelweiss, but my loyalty to the object espoused by our glorious little army has never wavered. Without me they have succeeded in tricking and trapping Gabriel. It is more than the great army of Graustark could do. Your highness will pardon the boast under the circumstances." "If this is true, you have accomplished a miracle," exclaimed Lorry, profoundly agitated. "But can it be true? I can't believe it. It is too good. It is too utterly improbable. Is that really Prince Dantan?" "Assuming that it is Dantan, Grenfall," said Yetive, "I fancy it is not courteous in us to let him stand over there all alone and ignored. Go to him, please." With that she passed through the doors, accompanied by Beverly and the young princess. Lorry and others went to greet the emaciated visitor in rags and tags. Colonel Quinnox and Baron Dangloss looked at one another in doubt and uncertainty. What were they to do with Baldos, the prisoner? "You are asking yourself what is to be done with me," said Baldos easily. "The order is for my arrest. Only the princess can annul it. She has retired on a mission of love and tenderness. I would not have her disturbed. There is nothing left for you to do but to place me in a cell. I am quite ready, Colonel Quinnox. You will be wise to put me in a place where I cannot hoodwink you further. You do not bear me a grudge?" He laughed so buoyantly, so fearlessly, that Quinnox forgave him everything. Dangloss chuckled, an unheard-of condescension on his part. "We shall meet again, Count Marlanx. You were not far wrong in your accusations against me, but you have much to account for in another direction." "This is all a clever trick," cried the Iron Count, "but you shall find me ready to accommodate you when the time comes." At this juncture, Lorry and Count Halfont came up with Ravone. Baldos would have knelt before his ruler had not the worn, sickly young man restrained him. "Your hand, Captain Baldos," he said. "Most loyal of friends. You have won far more than the honor and love I can bestow upon you. They tell me you are a prisoner, a suspected traitor. It shall be my duty and joy to explain your motives and your actions. Have no fear. The hour will be short and the fruit much the sweeter for the bitterness." "Thunder!" muttered Harry Anguish. "You don't intend to slap him into a cell, do you, Gren?" Baldos overheard the remark. "I prefer that course, sir, until it has been clearly established that all I have said to you is the truth. Count Marlanx must be satisfied," said he. "And Baldos, is all well with her?" asked the one we have known as Ravone. "She is being put to bed," said Baldos, with a laugh so jolly that Ravone's lean face was wreathed in a sympathetic smile. "I am ready, gentlemen." He marched gallantly away between the guards, followed by Dangloss and Colonel Quinnox. Naturally, the Graustark leaders were cautious, even skeptical. They awaited confirmation of the glorious news with varying emotions. The shock produced by the appearance of Prince Dantan in the person of the ascetic Ravone was almost stupefying. Even Beverly, who knew the vagabond better than all the others, had not dreamed of Ravone as the fugitive prince. Secretly she had hoped as long as she could that Baldos would prove, after all, to be no other than Dantan. This hope had dwindled to nothing, however, and she was quite prepared for the revelation. She now saw that he was just what he professed to be, a brave but humble friend of the young sovereign, and she was happy in the knowledge that she loved him for what he was and not for what he might have been. "He is my truest friend," said Ravone as they led Baldos away. "I am called Ravone, gentlemen, and I am content to be known by that name until better fortune gives me the right to use another. You can hardly expect a thing in rags to be called a prince. There is much to be accomplished, much to be forgiven, before there is a Prince Dantan of Dawsbergen again." "You are faint and weak," said Lorry, suddenly perceiving his plight. "The hospitality of the castle is yours. The promise we made a few days ago holds good. Her Highness will be proud to receive you when you are ready to come to the throne room. I am Grenfall Lorry. Come, sir, rest and refresh yourself in our gladdened home. An hour ago we were making ready to rush into battle, but your astonishing but welcome news is calculated to change every plan we have made." "Undoubtedly, sir, it will. Dawsbergen hardly will make a fight to release Gabriel. He is safe in your dungeons. If they want him now, they must come to your strongholds." "They will not do it, believe me," said Ravone simply. "Alas, I am faint and sore, as you suspect. May I lie down for an hour or two? In that time you will have heard from your wardens, and my story will be substantiated. Then I shall be ready to accept your hospitality as it is proffered. Outside your city gates my humble followers lie starving. My only prayer is that you will send them cheer and succor." No time was lost in sending to the gates for the strollers who had accomplished the marvel of the day. The news of Gabriel's capture was kept from the city's inhabitants until verification came from the proper sources, but those in control of the affairs of state were certain that Ravone's story was true. All operations came to a standstill. The movements of the army were checked. Everything lay quiescent under the shock of this startling climax. "Hang it," growled Anguish, with a quizzical grin, as Ravone departed under the guidance of Count Halfont himself. "This knocks me galley west. I'd like to have had a hand in it. It must have been great. How the devil do you think that miserable little gang of tramps pulled it off?" "Harry," said Lorry disgustedly, "they taught us a trick or two." While the young princess was being cared for by Yetive's own maids in one of the daintiest bedchambers of the castle, Beverly was engaged in writing a brief but pointed letter to her Aunt Josephine, who was still in St. Petersburg. She had persistently refused to visit Edelweiss, but had written many imperative letters commanding her niece to return to the Russian capital. Beverly now was recalling her scattered wits in the effort to appease her aunt and her father at the same time. Major Calhoun emphatically had ordered her to rejoin her aunt and start for America at once. Yesterday Beverly would have begun packing for the trip home. Now she was eager to remain in Graustark indefinitely. She was so thrilled by joy and excitement that she scarcely could hold the pen. "Father says the United States papers are full of awful war scares from the Balkans. Are we a part of the Balkans, Yetive?" she asked of Yetive with a puzzled frown, emphasizing the pronoun unconsciously. "He says I'm to come right off home. Says he'll not pay a nickel of ransom if the brigands catch me, as they did Miss Stone and that woman who had the baby. He says mother is worried half to death. I'm just going to cable him that it's all off, because he says if war breaks out he's going to send my brother Dan over here to get me. I'm having Aunt Josephine send him this cablegram from St. Petersburg. They never fight in Balkans. Just scare each other. Skip headlines, father dear. We'll be home soon. Beverly. How does that sound? It will cost a lot, but he brought it upon his own head, and we're not in the Balkans anyway. Aunt Jo will have a fit. Please call an ADT boy, Princess. I want to send this message to St. Petersburg." When Candace entered the princess's boudoir half an hour later, she was far from being the timid youth who first came to the notice of the Graustark cabinet. She was now attired in one of Beverly's gowns, and it was most becoming to her. Her short curly brown hair was done up properly, her pink and white complexion was as clear as cream now that the dust of the road was gone, her dark eyes were glowing with the wonder and interest of 19 years, and she was, all in all, a most enticing bit of femininity. "You are much more of a princess now than when I first saw you," smiled Yetive, drawing her down upon the cushions of the window seat beside her. Candace was shy and diffident, despite her proper habiliments. "But she was such a pretty boy," protested Dagmar. "You don't know how attractive you were in those—" Candace blushed. "Oh, they were awful, but they were comfortable. One has to wear trousers if one intends to be a vagabond." "I wore them for more than a week." "You shall tell us all about it," said Yetive, holding the girl's hand in hers. "It must have been a most interesting week for you." "Oh, there is not much to tell, your Highness," said Candace, suddenly reticent and shy. "My stepbrother, oh, how I hate him, had condemned me to die because he thought I was helping Dantan. And I was helping him, too, all that I could. Old Bappo, master of the stables, who has loved me for 100 years, he says, helped me to escape from the palace at night. They were to have seized me the next morning. Bappo has been master of the stables for more than 40 years. Dear old Bappo." He procured the boys' clothing for me, and his 2 sons accompanied me to the hills, where I soon found my brother and his men. We saw your scouts and talked to them a day or 2 after I became a member of the band. Bappo's boys are with the band now, but my brother Danton shall tell you of that. I was so frightened I could not tell what was going on. I have lived in the open air for a week, but I love it. Danton's friends are all heroes. You will love them. Yesterday old Franz brought a message into the castle grounds. It told Captain Baldos of the plan to seize Gabriel, who is in the hills near your city. Didn't you know of that? Oh, we knew it 2 days ago. Baldos knew it yesterday. He met us at 4 o'clock this morning. That is part of us. I was sent on with Franz so that I should not see bloodshed if it came to the worst. We were near the city gates. Baldos came straight to us. Isn't it funny that you never knew all these things? Then at daybreak Baldos insisted on bringing me here to await the news from the pass. It was safer, and besides he said he had another object in coming back at once. Beverly flushed warmly. The 3 women were crowding about the narrator, eagerly drinking in her naive story. He came in through one of the big gates and not through the underground passage. That was a fib, said Candace, looking from one to the other with a perfectly delicious twinkle in her eye. The conspirators gulped and smiled guiltily. Baldos says there is a very mean old man here who is tormenting the fairy princess. Not the real princess, you know. He came back to protect her, which was very brave of him, I am sure. Where is my brother? She asked, suddenly anxious. He is with friends. Don't be alarmed, dear, said Yetive. He is changing clothes too? He needs clothes worse than I needed these. Does he say positively that Gabriel has been captured? Yes. Did you not know of it? I was sure it would happen. You know I was not with them in the pass. Yetive was reflecting, a soft smile in her eyes. I was thinking of the time when I wore men's clothes, she said. Unlike yours, mine were most uncomfortable. It was when I aided Mr. Lorry in escaping from the tower. I wore a guard's uniform and rode miles with him in a dark carriage before he discovered the truth. She blushed at the remembrance of that trying hour. And I wore boys' clothes at a girls' party once. My brother Dan's, said Beverly. The hostess's brothers came home unexpectedly, and I had to sit behind a bookcase for an hour. I didn't see much fun in boys' clothes. You ought to wear them for a week, said Candace, wise in experience. They are not so bad when you become accustomed to them. That is, if they're strong and not so tight that they— You all love Baldos, don't you? Interrupted Yetive. It was with difficulty that the listeners suppressed their smiles. Better than anyone else. He is our idol. Oh, your highness, if what he says is true, that old man must be a fiend. Baldos a spy? Why, he has not slept day or night for fear that we would not capture Gabriel, so that he might be cleared of the charge without appealing to my brother. He has always been loyal to you, the girl said with eager eloquence. I know, dear, and I have known all along. He will be honourably acquitted. Count Marlanx was overzealous. He has not been wholly wrong, I must say, in justice to him. How can you uphold him, Yetive, after what he has said about me? Cried Beverly, with blazing eyes. Beverly, you know I don't mean that. He has been a cowardly villain so far as you are concerned, and he shall be punished, never fear. I cannot condone that one amazing piece of wickedness on his part. You, then, are the girl Baldos talks so much about, cried Candace eagerly. You are Miss Calhoun, the fairy princess. I'm so glad to know you. The young princess clasped Beverly's hand and looked into her eyes with admiration and approval. Beverly could have crushed her in her arms. The sounds of shouting came up to the windows from below. Outside, men were rushing to and fro, and there were signs of mighty demonstrations at the gates. The people have heard of the capture, said Candace, as calmly as though she were asking one to have a cup of tea. There was a pounding at the boudoir door. It flew open unceremoniously, and in rushed Lorry, followed by Anguish. In the hallway beyond, a group of noblemen conversed excitedly with the women of the castle. The report from the dungeons, Yetive, cried Lorry joyously. The warden says that Gabriel is in his cell again. Here's to Prince Danton. Ravone was standing in the door. Candace ran over and leapt into his arms. End of chapter 28.